Stanley is one of the, she's in this book, We Humans. And oddly enough, and I don't know if you're aware of this, Lauren, but we actually named this book after your poem.
You guys asked me if you could use that name, actually. Somebody did, Eugenie or someone.
Yeah, and it's an absolutely wonderful poem, and I hope that you're going to read it today. Also, Lauren is permaculturalist and an architect and a musician and a mother of 2 children, I believe. And she lives on 2 acres where she has her own permaculture area. Is that correct, Lauren?
Kind of a compound, yep. It's our studio and our home and our shop and the whole 9 yards, yep.
And you are interested in nature in cities. Is that correct?
Very. Especially now.
Okay. So this is a lady of many interests and many talents. And I just wanted to mention one thing. I don't know if you've come across this. This is because you like ideas. This is a book. Can you read the title?
I can. Donut Economics.
Donut Economics. It's a wonderful book. And it's basically an economic system that is humanly based rather than financially based. And one of her big ideas is that she does not believe in growth, which is an interesting idea. But I just wanted to say this, that Amsterdam has adopted this theory as a way to organize itself. And this is the first example of these ideas being put into practice in the world. And I just wanted to mention this because I thought you might be interested.
I'm very interested.
That's enough of me.
Yeah.
Donut, I can email you some details.
That would be great. Yeah.
All right.
I'm definitely.
So with no further ado, I'm going to stop now and hand it over to you, Lauren. And I think we should all mute. Should we, Rosita? Rosita, we should mute.
I'm unmuted. I'm unmuted. That's why you couldn't hear me. Yes, please unmute yourself.
Okay. I'm the only one not muted, so y'all are stuck with me. Thank you, Emmanuel. That was lovely. I love that you started off describing me as a permaculturist. I think that's a first, but I think it's very apropos because I think that's it applies to every sector of life, really. What permaculture is all about. I'm just going to dig right in because more fun to just hear stuff. I don't know that I want to talk too much about me, other than to say that as you might have seen in the little teaser in the beginning of this week, I have always gone to writing as a kind of a introspective fallback, like walking, like music even. It's just these poems, you know, since I was a teenager, they just kind of come up. They're usually me seeking to connect, and there's a sort of a yearning tone that pervades most of them, really. It's a yearning about just the bigness of life and trying to connect. I have separated these poems into 2 sets as I went through, and they're really just from the last, well, there's a few outliers in 2006-ish, but they're really from the last 5 years, 6 years or so. So they're kind of fresh off the top, more or less. And there's 2 sets. One of them is a little bit more touching on, the first set I'll read is touching on this and that, and some people in the family. The second set has more to do with kind of my own internal struggles and yearnings and that kind of thing. And you'll get that as I read them. First one is called the most gorgeous spring. The most gorgeous spring of green, I reckon, the trees have seen for years. The most generous helping of rain, breaking out tribes of bugs, long dormant, now reconvening, reconceiving. Everyone starting a party, skipping school, singing. This, my baby's first, he sees the riot of peach blossoms, broccoli bolting into bee-speckled yellows, fragrant fireworks. The pups happy beyond themselves, gulping smells of truant weeds and lawns wild. All is love and loving. Freedom that comes with nothing else but waking, stretching, waxing, life and breath. Take me back to this spring, this March of magnificence, when my head is tired with the ache of heat and my eyes red with the ache of drought. Take me back exactly here, to new bluebonnet sprays, raked with dew, to startling banks of paintbrush, all the things you can drink. That was 2007, that was a little while ago. I live right down the block from a former airport. It's called Mueller Airport here in Austin. It's right in the middle of the city, and they turned it into a big, very successful redevelopment project. So it went from a natural land that none of us knew to just scraping it and becoming just acres and acres of tarmac for an airport. And then it was disused in the 90s because they moved the airport out of town more. So it all went wild again. It started to go wild again. These cracks started coming, all this life returned. And then they wiped all that out too. In order to build this new development, which is now, they've cut through new streets and there's new trees planted and it's quite nice. And they've got some lakes and greenways and they're doing a good job with it. But I was there through all of that stuff. And so I got to walk to what I call the Mueller Wildlands. And I was sad to see some of that go because it was so messy and wonderful. Nature was taking over. This poem is about that. Old airport. Soft meadow, you suffered grounds. Still remember? You trembled inside a crusted skin under a fury of engines 100 and more times a day. And in the deepest dark before the crest to dawn, your fibers slackened only slightly. Bugs came back, birds returned. Now look at you, soft meadow, the airport dead and the jets gone. Their shifted path of migration, leaving shards of memory to settle under blankets of smooth silence. Blithe landscapes of cloud, tufted forbs, lanky grasses, Blackfoot daisies, Mexican hats, all a prairie mirage. Bug song, bird song, would that the prairie dog catch on. Little kingdoms of life, as carefree and certain as humans are stern and uncertain. Darting wings and daring weed, plying at the wrinkled tarmac, shrinking concrete, fee booth ghosts, all gulping air through yawning fissures. Green tougher than a baleful black, the land molts before our eyes, shrugs and rolls and feels itself anew. I was in New Mexico last summer on my own for a couple of weeks in July as I was waiting out my kids' camp on the east side of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, other side of Santa Fe, other side of the mountains. They had a wonderful time. I was nervous. It was their first time there. They loved it. And I got a chance to just kind of be on my own. And I visited here, there, and everywhere in that area. This is called Chimney Rock Evening, sitting above Ghost Ranch, New Mexico. And I'll say a few words about this, what inspired it at the end. There is no other poem to be written. There is no other painting to be brushed. There is no other song to be sung or dream to be drummed. There is just this, the sculpting of stone masses by air, the jerking of dead trees by sun. Thick green blanket that flourishes by water, and sharp-winged birds calling and curling on updrafts. None of this needs interpretation. None of this cares what we do. I take pictures anyway. I'm only human, a simpleton who likes to capture. And I do dream, because why not? It's not clear why we're here in the first place. We might as well pass the time. Perhaps the simpleton tunes and frames we create are our footprints in reverse, particularly singular and brief, painfully singular and brief, a pattern in the sand, unsheltered from the wind and expecting to vanish, at risk of meaning nothing, but risking it anyway. Perhaps that's the only thing we can do, make of ourselves and our lives something that loops and ties together. An inspired, loving burst of take and leave, leave and take. Perhaps we are not meant to leave no trace. Look here, I wound up writing a poem anyway. I was thinking about this obsession with the whole mystique around Georgia O'Keeffe and the things, the images of the landscape that she captured for herself. And I felt like there wasn't a lot of giving back, or it was a certain kind of like outsider coming in and capturing something that struck, but that did not reach out. And I was doing a little bit of reading about what her interaction with the local culture and people were, and I just had some very interesting reactions to that. And so it's actually not a very optimistic poem. It's sort of like, why do we even do all this stuff? Why do we even make paintings? So, but we do. And it's good that we do. Okay, going back to Austin here. This is the very month of birth of my first son, my first child. It's called Once Born. All other things fall away. We drink hours of changing light through a window, the world outside, mad with life and death. I am, he is, the smallest, freshest petal, silken soul wash, teaspoon of infinity. He is, kite to a great blue. I am, kite tail fluttering. He is, revelation, a promise to myself, revealed, real. I'm going to read a couple poems that have to do with my father, who passed away last fall. It was abrupt. He didn't know he was sick with leukemia, and in 2 months he was gone. So the first one I'll read is during that time of like in between us finding out and him dying in November, and nobody really knew what was going on, but we knew that there was a transition happening. And you know, he was up on the East Coast in Maryland. I'm down here in Texas, and we weren't really encouraged to see him at all, so that was weird. I'll read a couple little things from that era. This is called Free, Not Free. A long time ago, you wrote me a poem I haven't been able to find, but I know I still have in a box, about a caged bird taking flight. I am caged inside that, inside loss. As I know, are we all. But I want you to know now, as your wings finally taste a little flight, that my cage is cracked and old, and I don't really believe in it that much anymore. Not really. Certainly not more than I believe in the me and the you inside of it. You may have written that poem, I will soon find, in a sudden flinging open of the shutters to light and air. You may have written out a piece of your heart, broken, healing, and well all at once, into words shaped for a daughter. You may have written a bar of the song at your birth and the song at your death. A song you had sprung without any idea of how it would carry on the wind. You know, once you let the breeze in, it can turn to wind. You are ever caged and ever free. You are caged, but forever free. He was a very reserved man. He's not one to talk about his, internal landscape at all. So the poem that he wrote me was absolutely beautiful, and it was a one-time deal. He wrote it for me on my 16th birthday. This is one more. This is probably the week after he passed. Pass it along, he said in that dad way of love, directed to him and now finding its way downstream to his children's children, and perhaps upstream to his parents' parents. I am daughter witness to the passing of his life as the passing of breath, of memory, of lullaby, of love. I look forward from where I am in the bone-white dry bed of a creek, with his breath high in the trees at my back. So, so, so sweet. The day he died, I was on a long, long cross-city walk with some girlfriends, and we were in a dry creek bed walking up Barton Creek Greenbelt. And right in the middle of that day, I got a phone call. So that's what was going on with that. This is my second set of poems that are sort of grouped together. You'll recognize some continuity in some of the themes and ideas, and even phrasing sometimes. So this sort of kind of a set. This one's called Now. My God, every time I turn around, the turning too turns on itself. And I am flung here now, inside out, but still unable to hear now. I am waiting, I am wanting, I am waxing, I am waning, I am waning, I am waxing, I am wanting, I am waiting. I am sleeping to awake and waking to sleep. I am driving to get there I drive back. I try and tell you my story, but how can I expect you to listen when I can't even listen to the person who is me? I try and tell me my story, but how can I expect me to listen when I let the words and the thoughts play so loud they cheat me from my truth, trick me from my worth? We are such loose bags of burlap around smooth souls, aren't we? Practically opaque, there are accidental holes we sometimes can see out of. We are shaggy, trying to be sharp. We are shattered, trying to be whole. The project of a life, no more or less than a leaf on a tree, the gape of love across a ravine. A storm cloud gathering ahead of steam, as good at dispersing as informing, and as weirdly beautiful. Starfruit. Disappearing into the wilderness, the star bank. Starfruit, sliced into flowers with a machete in the jungle. Plankton, universes of it, await their continued life bloom in the liquid depths of planet valleys. I am here in the middle of who I am. I am not asking for anything, counter to the indignance of youth, because I am older now and used to waiting. In fact, I give it too wide a berth. I am left with living from momentum and the small bites of hope that remain in the center of the table. Little slices of starfruit, maybe. I might bite into one and taste not only the solstice of a life, but the equinox of myself. I guess I wrote that this past January. This was last year. It's called Suffuse. Green suffuses everything right now, and it's crowned by the glory of color, flower, bursts of laughter, and it all says, there could be peace. My jaw I catch clenched as constantly as a traffic light. This proceeds down neck to shoulders. I am an organism of reactive muscle. My world is one of peace and harm. The love, the connection I dream about stays lodged just under the wrap of my skin, the fascia. The stories I would tell if the words in paragraphs 1 would leap from sleep to others' ears. I am a person wrestling with how to be alive, aware of the sin of waste, yet so timid, 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 to collect all the strands of yearning into a giant swirling lace, a lasso, a lioness. This is called Inside of Trying. Prayer is simply flight inside of gravity. No one quite knows how to. Everyone tries to hover. Thin wall of a flower is what separates you from you. This is the part that should never see damage, like the membrane of an eardrum. The stories you tell, all based on the first story you tell. These are the rage of wildflowers that come up in the meadows and woodlands and deserts, either because of a burst of rain or in spite of none. Oh, each one of you is so much more poetic than you'd believe, less obscure than you'd prefer. Oh, the day might yet come along that feels more like the sweet long twilight than daylight, when seeds take, either because of or in spite of the ground. And you've forgotten to note that you've noticed. It did rain a little, and that this is your prayer, a sudden gust, the not trying inside of trying. How am I doing for time? I got 3 more. Good?
It's okay.
Okay. 3 more. This is could. How could you possibly have known? Your knowing wobbles from the moment you know. Bring your ingredients, basil, lemon, wonder, doubt. We'll pick out the brown leaves, keep it as fresh as we can. How could you possibly have loved? Your loving lost footing the moment you awoke. Drown your embers in coffee, dream vapor, tepid memory, balloon losing loft. Spill the grounds on the counter and quickly trace the snapshot of your heart. If you get your fingers dirty, blackened, then the earth can start to make you whole. Keep little vials and vases on sills everywhere to capture small bounties of nothing that turn into something. Gold threads you tend to spin without noticing are the fibers that will tend to save you, wrap you, keep you. Let wonder and doubt persist as both friends and enemies. If you put the same roof over their heads, they'll get to know each other, and you can call this loving. All of the quiet. There is the quiet in the first of the morning you lose quickly. There is a tree in the sunlight living in a way you will never. Breathing is so different for different creatures. I take a breath designed to grasp the remaining wisp of still, the inside, the outside. I am done like an overcooked steak. Any walk I do to clear things like my mind, like the one I did last night, is only because there is nothing left to do. This is the real breathing, the way we get through it. We walk because we can't not. We walk until we can't. We move, dance, build, sing until we can't. We write until we can't. We dream until we go silent. Wood can be chopped and carved. Clay can be pulled and shaped. We can do all these things and should. Also, water is immersion, inside and outside, and air is spirit, in and out. But anyway, when it talks, spirit reminds we are all of the noise and all of the quiet. That was also last January. I guess I wrote that one. I don't have any post-pandemic poems today. This is my last one. It's short. When a song flies at you through a window, when a song flies from you out a window, A bird is born, maybe, another morning, baby. Your eyes clear, a chandelier, the sky loosens, patterns show. A beginning begins, feels familiar, feels odd. And your smile is close, but you're never far from the pretty patter of tears. Grab the song if you can, scratch it into your palm. It can be there forever or never at all. It's a piece of the vast, wrapped by the flesh of you. A gold nugget of you wrapped in the flesh of God. There's a piece of my insides right there.
Wonderful.
He can we unmute?
Yes.
Is Rosita here?
Yes, I'm here.
So I guess we can all unmute. I just want to say I can't be here for long because I have to go off to work in a food bank thing locally, so I have to leave fairly soon. But that was an absolutely wonderful reading, Mrs. Stanley, and I enjoyed every poem and took them all into my being. So thank you very much. Can we give her a clap?
Oh, thank you.
And the other thing I want to say, oh, hello, Ralph. Hi, Ralph.
Hi, Emmanuel.
Did I see Luzita behind you?
You
Yes.
do.
Briefly?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi.
Oh, and
Hi.
there's Richard Salisbury, otherwise known as Theo. Is that correct, Theo?
That's correct. Can you hear me?
Do you want to do a Zoomuse reading, Theo?
Yeah, I do sometime.
Okay, well, we'll be in touch with you. Next week, it is the featured poet is Solaheen Tom, who lives in Morocco. I'm not sure how we're going to put that together logistically, but he's Solaheen. I've known him for years. He's an admirable, a brilliant healer, and a very, very good poet. So I hope we can all make it here next week to hear Solaheen Tom. I will now stop talking. Lorraine,
Can
Thank
I say
you.
something? Oh, yes.
Welcome.
Yeah, I have a comment when I have a chance.
Go
Of
ahead.
course.
Stefan, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Richard. Okay. Lauren, there were several layers and I enjoyed all the layers. I feel like you really offered some insights into your very human process of making sense of life and dancing with the contradictions. And I really appreciate that because some poetry is very clever or amusing, but it doesn't let you in so much. You really, I really feel you've gifted us with that very human side of yourself. But I did also like the kind of wordplay. There was one I wrote down a few things. Peace and harm. I really like that, where you expect peace and harmony, you get peace and harm because it's a contradiction. And
Yes.
the sitting together of wonder and doubt, I certainly find that happens to me. I think my very favorite, just hearing it read, was Once Born. It was so vivid. I almost felt like I could imagine giving birth, which I've never done, funnily enough. I liked Here's a Kite Tail Fluttering. I liked all the imagery.
That was great.
Yes.
And the idea of a star fruit, the fact that you don't see it from the outside the way you see it when it's cut. You see something else, and that life is, yeah. Oh, and one more thing that really struck me was footprints in reverse, and the idea of what will we see after our walk is over. I like that thought. So fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's just really quickly, the reason I think you feel like you got a window into my thought process is that that's kind of how that's what I do with poems. Usually when I'm inspired to write something, it's because of something I'm wrestling with inside, as opposed to trying to let's find a subject to write about. Okay, now I'm gonna, it's usually not like that. Sometimes, but yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Manuel. Thank you for the conversation.
Bye.
See you soon.
Mhm. Actually, I have to leave too, but I'm so glad to have heard it all. I love it. I love to see that part of you. I really
Thanks, Sonia.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Richard was going to say something.
Richard, and then I'd like to ask something.
Well, I really liked what I heard. Let's see, it's Lauren, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lauren, yeah. But I didn't hear it all. I started out with this thing with no warning that I had to download Zoom before, and it went through this whole process with my wife. So it took me about 10 minutes. So I came in late, and then I'm still figuring out how to use this. For example, I wanted to send a comment to everyone. It tells me, okay, send it to everyone, type it out, and then it doesn't tell me how to send it. So it's there waiting for me to send it still. I have no idea how to do this. But I thought that watching a former thing, that was recorded from Reynold Weisinger, that I expected Emmanuel to have a break after each poem to allow people to comment or ask questions at that point instead of just reading straight through. So it goes awfully fast. And I'm going to have to go back and listen to this from the recording later, because there's a lot there.
Part of it, I wasn't quite sure about the timing, and I didn't want to go over. And I think once I start talking about things, it could start to drag on. So I didn't want that to happen. So that was partly me.
I see. Well, if I were in charge of this, which I'm not, I would say you get 20 minutes for your poems, but the comment time doesn't count. That doesn't go toward your 20 minute. But of course that's tricky to keep track of all that. But I'm sorry, I'm talking about process, but I really want to talk about your poems. I did have a question about the last line of your first poem, and now I can't remember the line or the question.
Well, I can do the memory.
Yeah, give me the last 2 or 3 lines, would you?
Raked with dew to startling banks of paintbrush, all the things you can drink. It might have been the first one that you heard.
No, I think I heard them all.
Yeah?
Now
Okay.
I don't know what my question was.
Yeah.
Maybe the drink seemed, it kind of jolted me, like, okay, but then you're talking about dew, so I guess that makes sense. But it was going by so fast that
Yeah. I think metaphorically it was drinking all of those things. And I should also add that I'm not a poetry reader giver. I don't give poetry readings, so I'm sure I could be schooled on how to do it better. Yeah. I practiced.
Well, I thought you did fine.
Yeah.
I thought you did a good job.
Yeah.
So that's all I had for the moment, but I'd love to have a chance to say more when I look at the recording, and listen to the recording later.
Yeah.
Please, go.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Yeah. Hi, Lauren. I think because my life is very urban, it's buildings and traffic and people. So your reading has left me with this incredible feeling of space somehow. And the thing that I really wanted to ask is, have you ever thought of writing a book? I felt like there's a novel in there somewhere.
Yeah.
It never occurred to you. It just felt like that it could be linked together into some kind of narrative somehow. I wanted to hear more of that. It had a very novelist, novelty sounding voice to it. And it's a very American voice that you're using. And I'm
Okay.
trying to think of authors, and is it the Midwest? I'm so ignorant. I've got no idea.
No. Well, it is the middle of the country. It's
Yeah.
very spacious. It's Texas, so we're all the way on the south, the kind of third coast or whatever. It's a huge state. The skies are huge. The space is big. Depends on if you're in a huge city like Houston, of course.
Sure.
But I think I don't hear much plot, and I always think of novel as plot-ish, more or less. And I think I've been very timid about that form of writing. However, I've thought about short kinds of forms.
Yeah.
Yeah, but almost more essay-like, or using a little something that doesn't, where I don't have to work so hard with index cards. Things straight.
But to a British ear, it's a very specific voice, and it kind of open. Do you feel, Stefan? You're English, isn't it? It's very it's a very specific American voice.
I felt as you did, Adrienne. It was like a lovely, wide open, very green landscape with lots of possibilities and reflections. And I could have easily listened to, let's say, a long short story in that style. But it's whatever comes. I think the nice thing about what you said about your process is that they more or less come to you. It's not something you've forced or worked away at, but you've just tidied them up a bit.
I think one of the things I've always appreciated is just making word juxtapositions that are not expected. Because I find it really tiresome to have done or do so much reading in my life where it's just like I start to get numb as to what the content is and what someone's trying to get across, because it's so worn pathways of words, and it creates trouble for me to connect with what's being said, probably to a fault for me. Maybe that just means I get bored easily. I don't know. So
allergic to
like
cliches.
crashing things into each other a little bit.
Well, I like Adrienne's idea. I think it's a lovely idea. Yeah, she made me reflect on two writers that you remind me of, and unfortunately, I can't remember one of them. Wendell Berry is one.
Oh,
These
Wendell
are
Berry.
American writers. So
Yes,
Wendell Berry, and he was a California author. He was at Stanford. He wrote several novels.
John McPhee? Not John McPhee.
No. I could go look in my library. It would take me 10 seconds to go look at the book.
Yeah, well, if you don't do it now, do it later and let me know.
Okay. But yeah, it does have a very wide open feeling and flavor, and yeah, it was also the imagery, the wildness, the living things were so important in your poems that you read today. I really appreciate
to
that.
hear everybody's reaction to that. I guess I'm so inside that frame of reference, I don't hear it myself.
May I speak?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm Susila Wati. I'm in Vancouver in British Columbia, Canada, north view. And just before I say anything, I made 4 comments in the chat, and I want to tell Richard, all you have to do is press enter and your chat is sent. You don't have to look for a send button.
Oh, enter, of course,
Okay.
This is my first time using Zoom.
No, it's
and
okay.
I don't like software. I don't like computers, but I have to use them.
I totally get it. I understand the frustration.
I'll send mine now.
It's learning a new language. There we go. So because when I'm with my friends and they ask me a question, I ask them, do you want the bullet version or the background? So what I'm going to, because
good point.
I have so many, as an intuitive linguistic person in my nature, so many links to things that I can easily sound to them as though I'm getting off track. So what I'm going to do is just read the 4 points that I typed in chat. Okay. So
Great.
the first poem, I thought it was really lovely. Thank you so much for that. I really thought.
You're welcome.
And then it echoes in the second comment. I'm saying I'm enjoying the links and relationships with nature.
Yeah.
And also the juxtaposition of words, and you used that word juxtaposition, so I felt like, oh gosh, I was on track. And then their interplay and their interconnectedness in language, it's very compelling, Lauren.
Yeah, thank you.
And my fourth carve, no, that was it. I guess those were, I guess there were just three. But to echo the comments of the urban Adrienne, and I lived and worked in England for 7 years in the 1990s. And what I missed was nature. And all the mountains were just like little hills to me compared to British Columbia. Right?
Yeah.
And I kept looking for places to go to walk by the water, or, you know, here we have sea walks all along in every community, or river walks. And those hadn't been developed yet in the 90s when I was in England. And I'd fight my way into Bournemouth or somewhere to find a place to walk by water. So it's very interesting to me to hear my British sister talking about the relationship between urban, and now I'm in an urban setting, but I'm in a very treed place, and I can, in a 10-15 minute drive, be in an old growth forest. So I have the best of both worlds in that regard. Thank you so much. I really appreciate hearing what you wrote, and it's inspiring.
Good.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. It's nice to hear that it's taking people back to a sense of their own connection to nature. Yeah, it's so important. Oh, I've
Wallace
really
Stegner. Wallace Stegner is the other writer you might have. Yeah.
Yes, right.
Wendell Berry and Wallace Stegner.
Yeah, I have both of some of their books. Yeah, of both of them. I'll pick them back up again.
I don't know if we're going to have any second rounds, but I would very happily listen to another series of your poems on a future occasion if we had that chance.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah, I will. Thank you.
The thing about that is that the reader learns and the administrators learn, and Emmanuel and Rosita all learn things that can make it go smoothly. I'm up on the 18th of September, and I'm a bit nervous, but I'm just trying to be calm about it. But a second go around in 2021, I'm sure might be 2022, the number of writers we have around the world.
Yeah. Could be.
I mean, also, Richard, what you have said about a pause in between of the readings. The thing is, we will have lots of back noises, background noises. So we are unmuted, but maybe we can say we all unmute ourselves, and then if someone would like to say something, they mute themselves and say something. Maybe we can think about to make it different, because then it's also more lively. I know it's when you just read it, it's not so lively, right? Yeah.
So another suggestion might be that you could ask people who present to break them into clusters, maybe 2 to 3, so that some of those things are still fresh in people's minds. And then you have a little pause where people unmute and you say something, and then you go for another. So it's not after every single one, but it's not after the whole thing.
That's
somewhere
a good
in between.
idea. Yeah.
That might
So
be
you
a
have
good
little
way.
batches.
Well, I like the way you clustered your poems, and you gave a little intro and then and right at the beginning, but that's my INFJ, the organizer. So
Yeah.
then the creativity is contained within the work, right? So you really set it up nicely.
I admire Stefan for actually scribbling little notes as we went, because you could probably figure out that I wasn't going to be stopping in between too much to.
I personally, everybody's wired differently. I really like having a series of poems, maybe all the poems, because they all have they're like a patchwork in my mind. And when I hear a phrase I really like, I do write it down because I may have forgotten it later, just enough to remind me. I guess I'm still a little bit of a student. write notes.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea. I
Well,
was still so flummoxed by having to learn Zoom on the fly that I had thought of writing notes, but I just didn't get to it.
Yeah.
Richard, I was
Next time.
Last week when we were trying to get ready for my Zoom session, we kept losing the visuals. And I don't know about Rosita, but my heart was sort of thumping quite heavily because just before the session started, the same thing happened. And I could see all my friends up there, but I couldn't see me. There was an invisible poet. And I had to switch the computer off, leave everybody for a bit and come back. So this techie stuff is, well, it's a new game, I guess. We'll get better at it.
Well, I'm sure this whole process that Emmanuel's taking us through will improve with time as all of us, and particularly he, gets more experience with it. It probably will become smoother in some way, you know.
Tonight seemed very smooth.
Well,
To
it
me,
did, but for me, I just got lost. I got lost.
Yes, okay. It'll be easier next time.
Right.
There will be a next week. There will be a recording of it. You can see.
Just, I think most of the people have to go, so maybe we can say goodbye for the audience. And
thank you, Lauren.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. And
yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Great to see you all. Bye.
Thanks, Lauren. Very nice. Very well, good. Yeah, really liked it.
Thank you. Thank you.